Mayor-elect Eric Adams announced Wednesday that Keechant Sewell will lead the nation's largest police department. This morning, she told CNN's Jim Sciutto how she reacted when Adams delivered the news.
I wasn't sure I heard him correctly first. It was actually pretty exhilarating. I know that I can do this job. I am thrilled that he believed in me to be able to give me this opportunity to do this job. But when he told me that, I actually felt phenomenal because I said now I'm part of his team and we can get started immediately.
Sewell's hire highlights how slowly female candidates have moved into the pipeline to be considered for chief positions. Research shows that women make up only 12% of law enforcement positions nationwide and only 3% of executive level positions. Here to discuss is Dorothy Schultz, the first captain of the Metro North Commuter Railroad Police. She's currently a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and retired LAPD Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. She's also the author of the Confidence Chronicles, the greatest crime story never told. Ladies, great to have you here. Sergeant Dorsey, tell me your thoughts on Keechant Sewell being named the NYPD commissioner for the first time in history.
Well, listen, this is a great moment for her, and I applaud my sister in law enforcement. I wish her well, but let's not be naive. This is still a patriarchal society. The good old boys still run this system. And listen, just in 2020, there were about 6 female police chiefs who were either resigned, run out on a rail, forced to retire. Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall. Over in Seattle, Carmen Best was run out on a rail after the city council cut her salary, and others. Erica Shields in Atlanta. How come the female police chiefs never seem to make it through their entire contract? So I hope that they're not setting Ms. Sewell up for failure. This is still a good old boy system. I've heard from the Benevolent Association leader, Pat Lynch, that he wants her to get them back on course, set the city right, and for him, a guy who hasn't seen a police shooting or beating of a black man he can't get excited about, makes me think he's expecting her to run roughshod over people who look like her.
Professor, your thoughts?
I think I agree as far as the issue of so many women chiefs being bounced out of their positions. I think the interesting thing is more than half of them were bounced out by female mayors.
But why is that? I mean, what's behind that?
I think it's a lack of confidence in many ways, that the women mayors are not sure of themselves, and it's very easy to push blame onto police chiefs, or in this case, the police commissioner, depending on which title is used in the city. Because I look at Minneapolis, where so much of the issues surrounding policing started, or the most recent set of issues, and there the male police chief, who actually replaced another ousted female, was able to retain his position, and now that he's announced he's retiring, some people feel he betrayed them by not saying that earlier. But it's amazing that he was able to withstand the local pressure, and so many of the women chiefs, well, we can't say they couldn't withstand the pressure. We don't know that because their mayors didn't allow them to withstand the pressure. Carmen Best certainly fought hard to keep her job, and we saw what the end result was.
So, I mean, what I hear you both saying is that this is going to be particularly hard for her, and particularly also, Sergeant Dorsey, because of the crime spike that we're seeing in various cities. So I just want to play for you what the San Francisco mayor just said yesterday about the future of crime fighting in her city.
It's time that the reign of criminals who are destroying our city, it is time for it to come to an end. And it comes to an end when we take the steps to be more aggressive with law enforcement, more aggressive with the changes in our policies, and less tolerant of all the bullshit that has destroyed our city.
Sergeant Dorsey, tell us, I want to get your thoughts on that, because does that signal that the pendulum is swinging back right now to, as she said, more aggressive crime fighting?
Well, listen, I mean, it's not uncommon, and we've seen this before, where police departments will pull back and let things get out of control. I mean, the bullshit she's referring to didn't just happen, and so why now all of a sudden does this black woman, of all things, want police officers to get more aggressive, more police killings, more unnecessary shootings, more uses of force that don't need to occur? So now she's gonna sick her police officers on an unsuspecting public? I find all of that offensive. This is not anything new, and I fault her if there's bullshit in her city for not tamping it down sooner.
But what's the answer, Sergeant Dorsey? I mean, she's saying that it's time to start cracking down on crime, and that hasn't, I gather that hasn't been happening, is her subtext.
Well, listen, I mean, you know, what needs to happen is that officers need to be more proactive and less reactive, and they need to be, in those instances when they're doing something that's contrary to their training, held accountable. That would be nice. And so all of that sounds good and sexy, but we'll see what ultimately happens when this pendulum swings, and now you have officers being uber aggressive in a community. And so my hope and prayer is that Miss Sewell has a real good support system around her, because after all, she's an outsider coming from Nassau County Police Department as a detective, and myself being a street cop for 20 years. You know, street cops have very little respect for detectives who make it out into the supervisory realm. And so we'll see what happens. I pray that they're not setting her up for failure, and I hope she's not coming in naive thinking Pat Lynch and his ilk are going to be really supportive of her. They've already said this is a different culture than what she's used to. Get ready, strap in.
Professor, you, as we mentioned, were the first female captain of the Metro North Commuter Railroad Police Department. And I'm just wondering, do you think that women bring something different to that job in leadership than men do?
I really don't, and I find in many ways that position is held primarily by people outside law enforcement, and in some ways I think it's held women back, because the difference, expressing difference, has been by many interpreted as weakness, and that's not a good thing for women, and it's not a good thing for policing. Each individual brings different skills to any job that they hold. And to say that all minority police officers bring certain skills, or all women police officers bring a different set of skills, what you need is an amalgam of skills. Some people are better at certain things than others. And one of the criticisms possibly of policing is that those kinds of differences have not historically been recognized. We're all the same, we all wear the same blue uniform or brown uniform or green uniform, depending on the department. And there's been very little recognition that different people bring different skills that are not necessarily related to the skin color of the department.
Well, Sergeant Dorsey, Professor Schultz, I really appreciate the candid conversation and the straight talk of sharing your thoughts as we watch this new era in New York. Thank you.
Thank you.